Yeah, hi everybody. I want to talk about doing a digital still life for a 2D design assignment here. First thing, since we have people from interior design and animation and other walks of life that might not have a fine arts background, don't know what a still life is. A still life, just look it up. It's an arrangement of objects, right? Traditionally, right? Fruit, flowers, objects. It can be anything, right? But traditionally, we're looking at something. If you think of these chazons and I don't know any of these, you can see that um, there's a breakup of space, and then the objects are on a table or something, and they're displayed in such a way that your eye moves in and around and through and back, to the focal point, back into space and around, right? Now, in these assignments, you can see that there is, let me just open up these digital still life. There's a number of ways to interpret this, right? Some people are looking straight down and the objects are floating in kind of a odd psychological space. Here's one, where it's just floating in space. We do have a gradient there. So there's different interpretations. But if you're completely lost, right? This here we have a grouping and then we have another grouping. So you can interpret this, but if you're completely lost, your traditional way of thinking about a still life is a foreground, a background, maybe breaking up the space, and then putting the objects in such a way that you can make the case that they're interesting. Now, for this particular assignment, what I would do is I've got 5 images here that I'm just going to cut out really quick, and I'm going to show you basically, if you don't know, how to go about doing this assignment, how I would do it, right? And I would probably do web large. Well, no, let me do web medium, keep it a little bit smaller for the sake of the tutorial, right? I'm going to flatten it to get rid of that space there. So here I've got my still life, right, that I'm going to set up. And I'm going to bring these elements in here and I'm going to place them in such a way that I can discuss traditional Western Renaissance kind of composition of foreground, background, big, medium, small shapes, moving the eye in and around and through, and landing on a focal point. Remember, all rules are made to be broken. There's different ways to approach any kind of composition, and theoretically. But in the basic introductory class, we're learning the basics, right? So let me just cut these out really quick. And I keep it simple. You can always clean up edges, right? I don't, for this introductory class, it's better not to use a lot of smart objects and things that would make it difficult for me to, I'm going to copy that. That would make it difficult for me to go in and move your still life around. Now I'm going to resize this down. All right, you can see. I just do Apple T, right? So I'm gonna make this. Remember, you can, once you resize it down, you can't resize it up without losing resolution. But I am going to do that because I want to talk about composition. Let me do that to the other elements, and then I will talk about composition. Hold on. Now I'm just cutting these out rather quickly, but just for those of you that are new to Photoshop, I mean, I could go around here with my, I probably should go around here with my lasso, but I'm just going to cut this out because it's kind of circular. And I'm going to copy. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to resize it. Right? Because I want to put these in a row so we can talk about composition. It's my last one. Oh, I love this little guy. I saw this guy down in Little Italy in San Diego. Little smiling Buddha. So how do there's better ways to select it. There's and you guys are learning those things. I'm old school. You'd have to see my personal artwork. I tend to, as a painter, I kind of do digital work like I paint. I am not. I can do photo. I can do super realistic, super fastidious stuff, and I have. But I tend to just rip this stuff out and especially now if we're just going to talk about composition. I can clean this up later. Whoa, we got a big area around his head there. Okay, copy. I'm putting in 5 elements, right? Now, in most of these assignments, you don't want to have, you want to have at least 5 elements, right? Because you don't want to have the success of any one design rest upon any one element, right? Hold on. I keep holding down the shift key, and because that was from the previous versions, and you don't hold down the shift key anymore to maintain proportions. Okay, here's my little guy. He's probably going to be the focal point. I love him. All right, anything else? Get rid of that. Hold on. Okay. Now, let's, whoa, I didn't want to bring him. Let's make him a little bit bigger, smaller, I mean. There, something like that. Now, anyway, let's see here. So, here's the deal. You might be asking, you know, if you haven't made art before, you know, maybe you're coming from interior design and you're used to designing a space or something, and you're like, what is a still life? What am I supposed to do? Okay, so let me just get these organized. Again, like I said, you know, once you size it down, you can't really size it back up without losing resolution. But I just want to talk about this logically. So you have these elements in here, right? Let's just jam them together like that. Okay, in this composition, this is what I call the boxed world. Like I open a drawer and these things are in it. Nothing's referencing the edge, right? In other words, nothing's going outside the edge. As soon as you take things out like this, it becomes a window on a world. That's more interesting for this class because it infers a larger world and we're just looking at a part of it. So the space becomes bigger. One of the biggest mistakes people make, number one, is they just cram everything in here and they jumble it together without any kind of, you know, sensibility. And they say, there's my still life. Well, just think of what your eye is doing here now. Your eye comes in, it comes over here, lands here, and it's done, right? Not very interesting. Let me pull something up real quick. So I was out shopping. We're heading to Hawaii for spring break, and we were out shopping. And I was looking around. I used to on ground. I take my my classes to the mall for field trips, right? Because you've got typography, you've got design, you've got interior design. So, for example, here was a surf shop. You know, shorts, things like that. We need. Look at the design. You know, we were talking about rule of thirds and just basic asymmetry. Lots of movement, lots of imbalance, right? There's a certain amount of visual balance here. But you notice how much movement there is? Well, they're selling sports. They're selling action, right? They're selling excitement. Now, let's take a look here. This is a different mall. Makeup, I think. Now, what do we have here? Symmetry, class, status. It's all just like zhong. They're not selling, you know, excitement and movement in sports and let's get out there and, you know, dance and everything. I mean, they might be once you put the makeup on or whatever this is, but look at how symmetrical and timeless. This is what churches and things are all about. This is, you know, your classic kind of stability and symmetry. So when you're doing a still life, wait, here's one more. So when you're doing a still life, what I would recommend is you could what would be interesting is to do a symmetrical still life and then an asymmetrical still life. But take a look at this composition. This is a big poster outside of that skate shop. So this is my formula for any composition that you would do in this class. Big, huge, looming foreground object that goes off frame. This is a window on a world. You imagine the skyline going off on either side. You imagine a world outside of this with sounds and experiences. Big, looming foreground object that you have to look past to see what else is going on. That right there creates depth, right? And then you look past it and you end up with something small. Big, small, scale. This creates movement. This creates depth. Depth creates space. You're sucked into this world, right? You come in, down, over. You follow the gaze over, but then you're caught by the can here, which you come down and over, down through this forearm and up the skateboard and over to the focal point, and then down and around and around and around, right? So let's look at our still life. First of all, these are all on layers. I would add a layer, and whenever you add a layer, you can label it. I'm going to call this background, right? Any way you want to subdivide your space is fine. I wouldn't have these things floating in air. I wouldn't put a line directly across the middle. Maybe I would do rule of thirds, right? I tend to do like a diagonal maybe. I'm just going to subdivide this space so that I can put things on top of that, right? And I'm going to just use black, and then I'm going to use my number keys on my keyboard to make it. Well, I'll keep it black there for now, right? Now you'll notice in the layers, things that are behind the layer go behind this. Let's call it a tabletop, and things that are in front of it stay in front of it. So let's say I wanted to put this behind. I'm just going to drag it down. This is another trick I often show people when I'm marking up their stuff. So let me move these out. Now you'll notice that we have same size shapes. That's very, very static. So what did I say to do? Make something huge. So let's make something huge, right? Let's make something huge and put it in the foreground like that example I just showed you. But let's not cover up one of our one of our items in our still life. All right? Big, huge object. We move past that and we see, oh, here's the Buddha. Should the Buddha be in the foreground? He gets so much attention, right? Should this be in front of the Buddha? The little laughing Buddha. Well, let's move that on top then, right? Now, I said everything's the same size, right? So we've got something huge. What about something small? Maybe we should have the Buddha be small in the back, right? Rule of thirds. What if I was like, well, hey, let me impress Prentice with my knowledge of rule of thirds, right? And let's take my focal point and let's put it, let's see, third. Let's put it over here, right? And then let's move this off. Whoops, hello. Let's put this here. Let's move this off here. That blocks. And then we need something that's small. Do we need something else that's kind of small? I don't know where this guy would go, right? And I'm not going to spend this whole tutorial. Believe me, I could sit here and I could play around all day with this stuff, right? Maybe I'll do a little thing like this. The eye comes in, looks at this, jumps on this, whee, comes right over to the focal point, which may or may not be good. And then comes down over here, jumps up to the peanut butter, doesn't go off because he's tilted over. Remember, I can tilt these, right? If I want an angle, I just do Control T, Apple T. Now the angle's pointing to my focal point. You know, the last thing I might want to do is add another layer and do another, break up the space in more than one. And let me choose a different color. Let me choose a gray for that. I want a gray. Let me choose a light gray. Okay, and then let me put the Buddha behind him. All right, so I would probably bring this over. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I would bring this up to break the line of the horizon line. All right, so now here's my still life. I come in, see this, have to move past it, go back into space, which creates space, see my focal point immediately, and I go, well, am I done? I come down here, I go, wait, what's this barrel doing down here? And then I come up to the peanut butter pretzels and then back down. I've got the start of a still life here. And remember, I can keep subdividing my space. I kind of like what's happening with the subdivision. Let me pick a lighter gray here. All right. But let me bring him down. Can move the layers around, Oh, Buddha's peeking out from behind there. I kind of don't mind that. Where'd my peanut butter go? Peanut butter pretzels. I'm always asking that. Let me see, wait. Peanut butter pretzels on top. All right. Now, you see how the space now is broken up? It's much more interesting. I can come in here and I can hike up over into here and I can jump back. Maybe there's even something way, way, way in the back. I could move this box back and I could have it be. I ask people a lot of times to say, if you can take me in space 10 feet, can you take me 100 feet? Can you take me a mile? Can you take me 25 miles? You know, how small can something be and still be recognizable? Can I make this thing, you know, this big and have it be, you know, behind something so it looks like it's sitting on there, you know? Maybe put him behind here. You know, I mean, I don't like that, but you see what I mean? I want to see how huge I can make something. I want to see how tiny I can make something. I want to have an interesting focal point that lands on that intersection of rule of thirds maybe. And then I want to have a subdivided space and I want to reference the edge. All right, I hope this helps. Now, the last thing I will remind you is we want to save this. We're going to save it as a PSD file. I'm going to do a file, save as. I'm going to save it as Still Life 1. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Where's my desktop? See how it's a PSD file? See how it has all those layers? I'm going to post that in the classroom. Then I'm going to do a file export. I like Save for Web Legacy because I'm just a legacy guy. And I'm going to save it as a JPEG, right? This is all flattened and it's much smaller. It's 188K. I'm going to save that. I'm going to post that to the classroom. That way, Prentice can open up the JPEG and look at it, and then he might go, well, wait, I'm going to open this up in Photoshop and move it around so I can show this person maybe what would happen if they, you know, move this out of the way or behind this screen or whatever, right? All right, so done. Now, can you use these same objects for your next still life? Yes, you can. You can now save this. You could save it as Still Life 2, and you could do a completely different. You see how you start losing resolution? You could do a completely different still life, and maybe on this one, you make it more symmetrical. Maybe you say, you know, and then you try to impress people in the class. You're like, yes, for my first still life, I wanted to play with symmetry, and so I made a very symmetrical, balanced composition. And for my second one, I wanted to play with asymmetry, and I wanted to have a composition that was much more imbalanced, right? So, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to post this, but you can use the same objects, rearrange them, and try to do something different. All right, I'm going to leave you with that.